Hi again, everybody. I'm Jamie Allison. This is the Big Idea, Big Moves podcast. This is the destination for high performers. We talk to people from different genres, different niches, just people doing really cool things in their space, and that we can hear a little bit about their journey and what's working for them, and hopefully take bits and pieces away for our own lives as well. So we talk to lots of entrepreneurs. We talk to lots of athletes, scientists, just people doing really interesting things. And so we have one of those today. Just before we jump into that, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that we have a connection with Epitome Sportswear. And the thing that's really great about kind of our connection with them is that they like to give back to the community they serve. So they spend a lot of time making sure that they can work to impact the inequities in opportunity for girls and women in sport. And so for that reason, a portion of their profits go directly to organizations and initiatives that support girls in sport. So that's something that we really like as well. And they really have a focus on kind of whole life success. So it's not just performance stuff. It's things that you can basically wear anywhere if you wanted to. So take a look in either our Instagram profile. You can go in there and into our bio. You'll see that there's a coupon code that you can use and get some percentage off there, or just go directly to Epitome Sportswear, and that's EPITOME sportswear.com, and check it out for yourself. So really happy to have Sara Sutherland with us today. She's an entrepreneur, a certified trainer, busy mom, most importantly, and health and wellness expert. She's a former collegiate athlete who spent over a decade in corporate sales and management, and has a master's degree in business. And she has her own podcast, Nacho Fitness Coach, as well, and has been featured on network television and in publications, everything from Shape and Oxygen magazine, to doing some stuff for Fabletics and stuff as well. So first of all, busy person, obviously, Sara, but thanks for taking the time for us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been a busy like 12 years. So
Yeah.
that's summary of all those accomplishments. It's great.
Yeah, it flies by when you've got all those things going on. So maybe that's where I'll start, is that you've got lots of streams of things that you're doing, but maybe just take us back a little bit about, the journey to get here. Like, were you always an athlete, and that just kind of obviously, took you on this path? Give us a bit of an idea of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I did. I grew up and I was very active in team sports. Really anything with a ball, I was all over it. And so that continued through college. So I was a collegiate athlete in college. And, you graduate from college if that has been your path, and you get to a moment where you're like, what do I do now? I mean, really, it was a very interesting. I was not prepared, I don't think, for that moment where organized team sports ended. And so it's like you look around and you're like, okay, what do I do? A huge part of my life is like, you feel like the chapter has closed. And so I was
Yeah.
like, well, you look around and you see people running. Maybe that's what I do. I become a runner.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was running for a while, but I am just not built to be a long distance runner. I did find some teams and found some things just for, fun social outlets more than anything, but there's not as much competitiveness that kind of comes out of some of that. And so my job started to take off, my
Mhm.
career, my corporate career, because I went to school for business.
Yeah.
And so I started to get really heads down in that. And I would sit in airports and look at all of the very overweight and out of shape folks really
Yeah.
struggling making it in the airport. And I was like, okay, is that going to be my future? Because that does not look like they're happy with a lot of them. And so I started then thinking, okay, which path am I going to take? Am I going to keep going down that one, or am I going to find a way to kind of bring my worlds together?
Mhm.
And so that's really kind of how my fitness journey started. Then as I was like, no, I need to make sure that I'm bringing myself along with me in this corporate life, that I don't lose the person that I've always been. And so
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah. Well, and maybe going along with that, is there, you do kind of figure out how to weigh off all those things, like to have kind of, success, not just in athletics, because you would have been so focused on that in a collegiate, and having to kind of balance all of those things. Is there something that like triggered that for you very specifically, that I need to make sure that I kind of balance these things a little bit, or did it just happen over time?
Well, if I I was in a traveling sales corporate job. And so we wore
Yeah.
business professional clothing all day, every day in airports, all of the things. And suits are not very forgiving. They're not like walking around in like leggings or jeggings or anything that has
Yeah.
stretch and give to it now. They are just there. And my suits were getting tight. And I was
Mhm.
like, okay, this is the fork in the road for me. Do I just go buy the next suit, the easy path, and just say, okay, fine, I'm ready for the next size. This is just my life now. Or do
Mhm.
I say, oh no, what is happening? And how do I take control of this? And how do I change what I'm doing and establish some different habits in this
Mhm.
new life that I'm living out in this world where I'm traveling and living in airports and suitcases? And so I got focused, I think, on figuring out that. In the meantime, I was a newlywed. We had
Mhm.
done a health challenge at work, so we've been really focused on like health, like year-long health changes.
Yep.
Right at the end of that, we got married, and then it's like we were newlyweds, and so that had went. We both were working and traveling, and we were dual income, no kids, and it was eating out and all the fun things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just so between the suits, and then just got to the point where I was like, I'm not really feeling very good. I
Yeah.
need to change something. So that was where it kind of all started for me.
Okay, so I'm sure there's lots of people listening that can totally relate to that, because obviously it's a huge chunk of the population out there. One of the things that you probably hear a lot is that, especially I think for moms who are working moms and and do all the things, how, first of all, if they're listening to you, I mean, the one thing is time, right? There, you always hear that is the biggest challenge, is how do I have the time to do the things that I need to do for myself, plus do all the other things that I have to do for everybody else? Maybe how do you approach that yourself? And then maybe because you have clients that you talk to about that, and you have kind of connections with people, how do you teach people how to do that?
Yep. I was fortunate in that I started my fitness journey before I had children, but now I have four kids and they were less than 7 years apart. So every 2 years we had a kid, we were adding to our family. And so now I'm on the flip side of that, where I do have the busy family and I'm a mom of young kids that constantly need me for everything. And so at the beginning, where I did have the luxury of just focusing on me, that is where I got hyper focused on learning nutrition, learning amounts of nutrition, because I am a firm believer that we overeat and we don't realize it. And so when you actually take the time to learn, and you have to learn it, it doesn't just come to most people. You have to learn about how much food really is, and what you're really truly consuming. So for me, that took 6 months of weighing everything on the scale. Now, during that time, I had found a program that I was doing online, but the gym just happened to physically be located in Kansas City, which where I was living at the time.
Mhm.
And so I would travel during the week, I would do the online program, and then once a week I would go in and see a trainer in person. But it gave me structure and accountability and a reason that I had to go through that learning process myself. And then that was the way that worked for me. After 6 months, then I got to the point where I could eyeball things. I just knew how much it was. And I do think people get to that point, but I also don't believe you can skip over that first part. That's just really kind of hard. You have to learn it, and you have to learn it for yourself. And obviously, there's a lot of different ways and methods that you can go about that.
Mhm.
For me, that's what it was. It worked, but I also now 12 years later still know, I still have all that knowledge with me. I
Yeah.
can eyeball things now, and I can go out to restaurants, and I know how much I'm consuming inside my house. I'm a better shopper with the foods that I choose to bring into our home. For all of those reasons, that was what helped me at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Look, now as a busy mom, what I see most, even for myself, but I also see a lot of clients, you focus too much on having to add in something. Oh, I have to add in going to the gym. Oh, I'm already busy, but now I have to add in doing this or that or that. Actually, you don't. What you do need to do is look at the things you're currently doing and see what you could do with small changes and tweaks that will help you at least get started. And then once you get started, you can add things down the road.
Yeah, I think that's interesting to say it doesn't have to be something you jam on top of it and figure out, because you're probably doing a bunch of things that you don't need to do too, and that f fills up some of that time. Um, and you talk about nutrition a fair amount there. One of the things that you hear a lot of the time right now, and maybe this is part of when people are learning and things like that. I'm assuming from what you said that you can eyeball a lot of things now, and are you one of those people who watches your macros and all that stuff that lots of people do now, or use that on their journey? Do you do that, and do you have any of that discussion with your clients, or is it more of a broad-based piece that you look at?
So today I don't journal anything. It's
Hmm.
actually probably one of my least favorite things to do because it is so mundane and tedious.
Yeah,
And for me, I'm like, who has time for that? Now, it works really well for some people. It kind of just depends on the person. But for
yeah.
me, that was like a really painful activity.
Hmm.
I wanted to find a way to not do that as quickly as possible. At the beginning, yes, I do. You do have to have a little bit of like self actualization that happens. And like, because until you stop and notice what you're actually eating, notice the amounts that you're eating, and actually have to commit it to pen and paper, it doesn't
Yeah,
really always seem real because nobody else is watching what you're eating other than yourself. So you can't be accountable to anyone else. Even if you're with your husband or significant other or a roommate, even, they're not watching everything you're putting in your mouth. That's all on you. And so you have to own that, and you have to understand that that's just part of the process. So, but if you're like me and you hate journaling because it's tedious, then do it as short amount of time as possible, but really focus on learning then. So there's a lot of different strategies that people will coach, teach how to kind of do that. Some say you got to journal your macros forever. And sometimes that works for people, but for me, that was never an option to do that.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that's important to acknowledge that there are lots of people that just becomes a very difficult thing over time, and how to deal with that. Um, you do a lot, I know now, focused on especially women in their 40s and above, and that kind of thing, and some of the changes that come just generally with aging over time and stuff like that. Um, what are some of the unique challenges of kind of really connecting with women, of that age group and higher, and what kind of challenges, like how do you work with them to through some of the challenges that they have in being able to do the things you want to do?
Sure, yeah. I mean, life changes, but everyone's life changes. We all go through
Mhm.
stages, we go through phases, and that's okay. I think the most important thing is just to realize that just because you're in a specific stage of life, you don't have to like write everything off and like throw in the towel for like ever. I mean, it might just be a short little thing, and that's totally fine. Because I fall into all those categories. I'm a mother of four small children. I'm 42, so I'm in my 40s now. And for as much as I love physically going to the gym, I can't tell you the last time I actually had the time or made the time to do a gym workout.
Mhm.
But I spend all day, every day, very active with my kids. If I have a chance to pick up my 40-pound 2.5-year-old, I'm picking her up and I'm throwing her with a couple kettlebell swings and we're doing some deadlifts or I'm picking her up and kind of tossing her up in the air. Like I choose then to work activity into my everyday life, not be like, okay, I have to carve out 30 to 45 minutes, 60 minutes. Some people think workouts even have to be a full hour to get like a true workout in, but you're missing out then on all of the rest of the activity that you can just work in throughout your day, which I do believe is a very important part of the picture and often gets overlooked because it seems too simple.
Yeah, yeah. And going along with that, I mean, there are probably changes even in how you've approached this since, you first started doing it. But a lot of people probably want to know your approach to like goal planning and things like that, both for yourself and maybe in how you do that with your clients. I guess, how do you approach it, especially knowing that, things change over time and your focus can change and all that fun stuff. How do you approach goal setting?
I I like to help build the foundation first. And so long ago, I came up with what I call the healthy habits. I actually wrote a book about it. It was an ebook for a really long time, and now I self-published it on Amazon, but it's the Healthy Habits Challenge. And so it's a very shortened version of a process to build a foundation that helps you get through all of those different stages as life will change. And it focuses on what appears to be surface level, the most simplest of activities, right? Taking some vitamins if you're not getting it all through your nutrition, focusing on sleep, water, general activity, but they're the building blocks to a solid foundation of just general overall health. If you get too focused on getting those gym workouts in every day, which they don't even have to be every day to be effective, you lose out on the other 23 hours of every single day, which you can be making a very positive impact to achieving your goals. So the very first goal, I believe, for people should be looking at what you're currently doing and changing what you can. Because if you try to set goals that are specific to scale weight, for example, say 10 pounds or, whatever, that what I see is that often leads to crash dieting, not effective techniques and tactics to just hit that like interim goal, especially once you include, say, like strength training, for example. Well, losing 10 pounds, that's not scale weight because you've got other things going on. And so if you get too focused on outcomes like that as your goals, I think that's when we start to see a lot of kind of that, like, I'll get it, but then I just come back to my old ways. And then maybe I'll set a new one because I've got a vacation or some event. And then I go back to my old ways. But if you can take an opportunity to take your old ways up here, then your peaks and your valleys aren't quite so dramatic, because you've taken the time to raise that foundation up and build it up to a level that you can sustain through all of the rough waters that happen in life. So,
Great. Um, you have a business background, so it maybe is a little bit different for you than some, but I'm sure even doing some of the things you do from an entrepreneur standpoint and just building kind of your online kind of business piece and all those things, what's been your biggest learning for that from that perspective? Like, what's your biggest challenges or something that surprised you by kind of either how difficult it was or how different it was than what you thought it might be?
I think for me, it was definitely building the empathy for everyone wherever they were at in their journey to meet them. I would have colleagues in my gym that I would see, going after every client the same way with their head and just like pushing things through. And it just, you have to meet the client where they're at. Everyone comes from a different place. I had to very quickly drop the college athlete mindset and realize I can't put people through the same workouts that I can do, maybe a lot of the same movements, but just really had to get super like hypersensitive really to what they were doing. And it's work. It's not always about working harder. I am somebody that I do happen to like to work harder when it happens. And I like to lift really heavy and I like to feel that like, I've accomplished something. But in order to have a successful workout, you don't necessarily need that. And for some people, that's a turnoff. They're like, okay, this isn't for me. This isn't what I'm used to, and it hurts and it doesn't feel good, and I can't walk the next day. And so then they quit, which also defeats the purpose. You should never want to have clients should never want to quit, right? So for me, that was the biggest learning curve as I started training people was, meeting them where they were at and then taking them along from there down their own path. So not mine, not my
Yeah,
path, their
yeah, yeah.
path.
I'm assuming you gain a fair amount of inspiration from people that you deal with. I mean, you have your own kind of things that come out of that, but what's that like? I guess knowing that you get to impact people and see the results of those kind of impacts you have.
That's probably the best part, really. I mean, when you see that life, like people physically change, not only their bodies, but like how they act, their mannerisms. It's not just seeing maybe weight changes, but their personalities and their outlook on life, like in short amounts of time. We had one client, he was the best. He's still probably, one of my favorites. I mean, not that we should have favorites, but of course, sometimes you connect with people differently than you do others.
Sure.
And he came in his very first kind of sit down consultation, and I could hardly get him to look at me. His head was hanging. You could tell he felt uncomfortable in his clothes. And he was just like, I'm here because I know I need to start, but I don't, he just didn't know. And his self-confidence was very low. And you could just tell he wouldn't look at me, and so we got through the first one and was all, take him through the process. And he came twice a week for 4 months. And by the end, I couldn't get him to stop talking. He was so confident. He would walk so much higher with his head up. I mean, he still had, goals ahead of him, of more things he wanted to still go do. But at the end of the 4 months he had with me, he was just a totally different person. His confidence was changed. He, walked around. He was more comfortable in his body. He felt like he had control over what he was doing, which is a very powerful feeling, to finally be like, I got this, and so he hit the goal that he wanted to with me. But then, what's the funny thing too, is once you hit whatever you think your initial goal is, you will get there and you will be like, well, but wait,
Yeah.
now I want to go do this. You never have a true destination, but once you get to where you think you're going to be, happy, if you will, then something else will come up, and just keep going with it. Just don't stop. But yeah, that's probably a really fun kind of
Yeah.
interaction, just seeing. And that he wasn't the only one. You would see a lot of them that would come through, and they would just, the self-confidence changes, walking taller, just excited in what they were able to accomplish, for sure.
Sarah, did you have, as you were coming through this industry, or even just kind of what's kind of your journey through this whole thing, have you had any kind of mentors that stand out to you? Have you had specific people, or is it just kind of a culmination of a bunch of things? What's that been like for you?
Yeah. So you mentioned I have a business background. I mean, that was my
Mhm.
college degrees are marketing, business management. I have my master's in business, but fitness and being active was always kind of my hobby. And so when I started looking for that own personal transformation in that program, Diana Shalou Lacerte she's one of her and her husband own Hitch Fit. And so it's a gym in Kansas City. But they have online programs. And so a college roommate actually had done a program with them, and I saw her before and afters, which is how I kind of found them. And she was somebody from the very beginning that was my online coach. And then I would train with another person actually in the gym when I would go in there. But for some reason, she just kind of like stayed as a mentor for me, really,
Mhm.
because she had a fitness modeling background. They had a very strong fitness competition background. And so once I got started into my own just kind of personal transformation, and I started seeing changes happening, and I looked at fitness competitions then as my like new competition, my new reason to be like, okay, I'm going to stick to my plan because I'm going to go do this. I'm going to stick to my plan and get my workout in, even though I'm really tired, because I want to go do this. And so I've always been somebody that events like that are a hard date help me stick to things just like they were when I was an athlete. And so she had that background, and she then owned the gym, and so she'd be in and out. And so I think for me, she was a huge mentor in kind of my journey, not only as a coach, her coaching style. I'm not a hard ass coach because I believe that you have to own what you're doing. I'm going to guide you, but if you're looking for somebody to call you out, belittle you, and make you feel really bad about yourself, then I'm not the one. But
Mhm.
sometimes that works for people, and that's what gets you through. But so her coaching style, her mentorship through fitness competitions, coaching me through the fitness competitions, getting me started. Then I went and got my first personal training certification, and then I went on staff at their gym. And so I kind of had that whole process and journey behind me. But I mean, I'd probably give my biggest shout out to Diana, because was always there for me at the beginning as I got things going. So
Yeah. And I'm sure people have an idea of who you are, and from the other things you do and stuff like that. Is there something that you think if people met you kind of outside of kind of your professional kind of world that would surprise them about you?
oh, I don't know. I mean, I feel like a lot of people can pinpoint that I have like an athletic career or athletic background.
Yeah.
Um, I do get a lot of people that are surprised that I have 4 kids.
Mhm.
And we didn't get married until we were older. We were 30 and 31. So I didn't have my oldest daughter until I was 33. And, so that I think, quote unquote, makes me an older mom. I'm 42 and I've got kids that are 9 to 2.5.
Yeah.
And so, when I go to school drop off, obviously a lot of the girls that are younger than me, are moms,
Yeah.
they age is different. And so I think that's maybe the most surprising thing right now is just like,
Yeah.
wait, you got 4 and you have the businesses, we own a physical gym as well,
Mhm.
all the things that you do. And I'm like, well, I do sleep, but I really just don't watch TV that much. So
Yeah, 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 yeah. You just do different things, and
Mhm.
that's not such a bad thing.
Mhm.
So one of the things that we always do with kind of anybody that we talk to is try to leave the audience with a couple of kind of tangible things. Lots of them that we've already talked about today, but we'll kind of capsulize it one way that if somebody is you even get examples of a couple of people that are probably like right now listening and thinking they're maybe really struggling with getting their weight under control or want to start that process, but are either intimidated or just kind of don't know where to start. Do you have a couple of tips on how they can get themselves started on that journey?
Sure. Yeah. My number one thing that when I do presentations and talks, I mean, I'll have people that will come ask me to come speak to smaller groups, to larger groups, women's and wellness events, things like that.
Mhm.
My number one thing that I like for people to remember is you need to give yourself some grace. And I say that because no other area in life are you expecting out of yourself to be 100% perfect from day one. You don't go to a job and are expected to know everything day one. Have your first child and know as much as you do as you are like learning. And so I just think that in this world of health and fitness and dieting and whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
far too often we set this expectation for ourselves to be 100% perfect to plan, 100% perfect to workouts. I can't miss anything. I can't skip this. I have to be 100% perfect or I'm just going to toss it all out. And I'm like, that is not the way that it is in any area, any other area in life. We give ourselves grace, we understand there's learning. And I think if there's one takeaway to any goal, I think that would be it because it can translate to a lot of different things. And then the other takeaway I would say, and this is maybe a little bit of like a shameless plug, but I do with a friend have a podcast that's called Nacho Fitness Coach.
Mhm.
And the whole premise behind that conversation started because she was a beginner. She was like, at the time, probably how much younger she was maybe 35, 34, 35.
Mhm.
And she got to the point where she had never exercised in her entire life. She's never seen a gym. She was never an athlete. She's got 2 kids. And she saw a picture of herself sitting in a chair and was like, whoa, what has happened to me? I think I need to do something. And so she would Google everything, which the
Yeah.
internet is a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
And she would Google everything, but then she would come to me and she'd be like, what do you think about this? Should I do this? What do you think about this? Because she was a true beginner from the very beginning. And I was like, yes, no, some things I'd roll my eyes at her, some things I'd be like, okay, you can start with that, whatever. And
Mhm.
so I was giving her just my honest opinion back to whatever she was finding that was out there. And one night she literally had a dream that we started a podcast. And I was like, that'd actually be kind of fun, mostly because I felt like it was such a realistic situation. You have new beginners, you
Mhm.
maybe have somebody to chat to or not, an expert, whatever. answer these very simple questions. And so we just basically started recording the conversation. And so I have had a lot of people come up to me saying that they have learned a lot from this free podcast just to get them started. So that would probably be another takeaway, is whether it's my podcast or something else, just start learning. And a lot of free content is out there that's super great. You can pay for it. Maybe you learn with the free stuff first, and then you hit a point where you pay a coach. Nobody's going to know that journey as well as you will. So you have to make that decision, for yourself. But that, I would say, giving yourself some grace, and then you're going to have to learn at some point. So how you want to do that, you can, but definitely start to get educated as well.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many opportunities, and thank you for that. I mean, the one thing that we will do, and that'll be the next piece, is that we're going to put in our show notes. We'll put through a link to your podcast, so people, if you do hear that, didn't get kind of how to find it right away, we'll have a link in there. So obviously check that out. So some great stuff there. If people are trying to find kind of more about you and how to connect with your stuff, what are the best ways of doing that, Sara?
Sure. So my website is sarasutherlandfitness.com. Instagram handle is the Sara Sutherland. But I do also have like a coaching profile that's Sara Sutherland Fitness as well. So either one of those, you'll be able to find me. And so I've got my contact information out there to reach out. It's a bunch of information about me, my history. And then my book is available too on Amazon. So we can link that maybe as well as just a quick
for sure.
pick up to get started maybe with that too.
Yeah. We'll make sure that we've got all of those links in the show notes when we go through. So if you heard this and want to, just definitely check that out and get some of those links, and we'll be able to follow you. Lots of great information on there, and pick up the book as well. So again, I know things are busy, as we've talked about through this whole kind of podcast, but thank you for taking the time today, Sara. It's been great. Lots of great stuff you've shared.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was really great talking to you. You've got a great little podcast here, and a great premise to be able to bring lots of different industries and niches into people to be able to listen. So I love it. Nice work.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And to everybody else, again, thank you for listening. If you haven't hit subscribe on the podcast, do that now. We have great people every week, just like Sara. And we will talk again soon on Big Idea, Big Moves.